This is all you really need. Buying art supplies is overwhelming. In this video, I'm going to break down what you actually need to get started with watercolor. It's less than you think. I've got pro-level recommendations for a beginner budget. If you start with these supplies, you won't have to upgrade later. They'll take you way beyond beginner. These are the supplies that I continue to reorder years into my watercolor journey. I'll tell you exactly what paper, paint, palette, and brushes to get. Plus, I'll share one low-tech piece of equipment that I think every beginner should have. I want to start with paper because it's the biggest mistake I see beginners make: painting on the wrong paper. Even if you're a beginner, you should be painting on 100% cotton paper with a cold press texture. Watercolor just behaves better on 100% cotton paper. So save yourself a lot of frustration and get the best paper that you can afford. I keep reordering these sketchbooks. These are the Be Creative watercolor sketchbooks, and they are 100% cotton paper. I usually paint on Arches paper, which is my absolute favorite, but I wanted something more affordable for swatching, experimenting, and doing watercolor studies. This paper is 100% cotton and it's great for beginners. I even use it in some of my videos. This is from my Simple Watercolor Patterns tutorial. I love these spiral sketchbooks because they open and lay flat. You don't need any clips to keep them open. You can even flip it back if you are tight on space. I also like that the paper has a perforated edge. You can tear out the paper to paint on separately, or if you're a beginner and you mess up in your sketchbook, you can just tear that page out and no one will ever know it was there. This is the paper I use to demo in my how to use watercolor video. It behaves very well. It's 100% cotton paper. It's not as good as Arches paper. I have noticed that it's not great with masking fluid, and if I use tape to tape off a border, I do need to heat it with a hairdryer to remove it without ripping the paper. But it is such an affordable alternative and a great way for beginners to start with 100% cotton paper. The reason I really love these sketchbooks and keep ordering them is because they are so affordable. They cost about the same as a pad of 9x12 Arches paper, but this pad only has 12 sheets of paper versus the sketchbook, which has 30 sheets of paper. For about the same price, you're getting more than double the paper in these sketchbooks. I did also want to share one other alternative I have just started trying out. This is the Academy Watercolor Paper Pad by Bao Hong. This brand has an artist grade and an Academy grade, but the Academy grade is still 100% cotton. This paper behaves very similarly to Arches, but it's a much more affordable price. It comes in a block of 20 sheets, meaning it's glued on all sides so you don't have to tape the paper down. So I just wanted to share this as another affordable option to get started with. There are hundreds of paint colors, and it's tempting as a beginner to get as many colors as you can afford, but that usually means downgrading the quality of the paint. Instead, I want you to paint with artist grade paints, and you only need 6 colors to get started. It's called a split primary color palette. This is the one I recommend by Daniel Smith. It has 2 reds, 2 yellows, and 2 blues. I will put the link to this set below. You can mix any color you need from these 6 colors. Don't underestimate these tiny 5 milliliter tubes. This small amount of paint will last you forever. I painted with these small tubes for over a year before I had to buy more paint. You can watch my limited color palette video to see tons of examples that I painted with these limited colors. You can also check out my how to mix any color video to learn how to use a split primary color palette to get the best color mixes. Next up is the palette. I have used so many different palettes over the years, from a small porcelain palette that didn't have any mixing space to a huge studio palette that I didn't have space for. For a long time, I used tin palettes with watercolor pans, but at the end of last year, I found a new favorite watercolor palette. This is the Magello Airtight Watercolor Palette. This is my favorite palette that I would buy again and I would recommend for beginners. I'll put the link to this palette below. When my watercolor pans run out, I'm transitioning everything to this style of palette. It has 18 wells, so you have room to grow and add more colors. The wells are large and slanted. It's easy to squeeze paint from the tube into these wells. I like these two mixing areas here. I keep one for warm color mixing and one for cool color mixing, but this palette has even more mixing space. This tray is removable for additional mixing space. And if I take out this color card, there is another large mixing area. You can watch my video on how I set up this palette and get the free traceable color swatch card that fits inside. One other thing I think is great about this palette is that you can fit a few brushes inside and still close the palette and it seals tightly. This is great for travel. Next, you're gonna need some watercolor brushes. Princeton Neptune brushes are my absolute favorite. I tried a lot of brushes before I discovered these, and now this is pretty much all I buy. One thing I really like about the Princeton Neptune range is that you can buy the brushes individually, but they also have a few sets of 4 that I think are a great way to try out different brush sizes and types. The first set I got included a number 6 quill, a 1/2 inch square wash, a number 8 round, and a 1 inch mottler. I really like this 1 inch brush for wetting my entire paper for wet on wet techniques. But my 2 favorite brushes out of this set are the 1/2 inch square wash and the number 8 round. So if you can only afford 2 brushes, I think those are 2 great brushes to start with. The round is a classic watercolor brush. Everyone needs to have one of those. And the square wash is great for wetting the paper or doing large flat washes. These are synthetic squirrel brushes. Princeton calls these their thirstiest brushes, and they do hold a ton of water, so you don't have to dip back into your paint so often, but they release the paint evenly on the paper, so they're really nice to paint with. I love them so much that I am slowly adding to my Neptune collection. There is one more low-tech add-on I want to recommend to you. It's not a watercolor supply, but I think every watercolor beginner should have one of these. It's an LED light table. I use this constantly as a beginner. If you are following tutorials or taking classes where the teacher provides a line drawing that you can trace onto your watercolor paper, this LED light box is the fastest way to transfer drawings. Check out my Tracing Hacks video for some tips on how to use a light box and 3 other ways to transfer a drawing to watercolor paper. There you have it. That's everything I recommend for watercolor beginners. I hope I've removed some of the overwhelm from buying art supplies. Once you get your new watercolor supplies in, check out my Watercolor for Beginners playlist.